Homework Reading 2.1. Can a thing have mass even if you can't feel it? Getting ready. Do you ever eat popcorn? Even if you do not eat it, you probably know how popcorn smells. These items all have strong odors. Popcorn, oranges, gasoline, nail polish remover. Even though materials can be very different in some ways, they can be similar in other ways. These items have strong odors, but those odors are very different. Today you will read about other similarities between materials like these. To help you think about comparing materials, you will read about popcorn first. How can I describe how much popcorn I have? If you go to the movies and you are hungry, you might want a lot of popcorn. Another time, you might only want a little. If you want a lot of popcorn, you ask for a large, enough popcorn to fill a large container. If you want just a little, you ask for a small, enough popcorn to fill a small container. Outside of science class, you can use the sizes of the containers to describe the amount of popcorn. Words like small and large can be useful. Even though you get a lot of popcorn in a large container, you do not get exactly the same amount every time. The number of pieces will not always be the same. So, instead of using phrases like a lot, a little, large, or small, scientists use a measurement called mass. Mass is a measurement of the amount of material. In science, you can measure mass using a scale or a balance. The amount of popcorn in the large container can be described as 200 grams. The amount of popcorn in the small container can be described as 80 grams. You know the amount of popcorn in each container is different because the masses are different. Finding the mass of a sample. In class, you measured mass using an amount of material that scientists would call a sample. Have you ever been in an ice cream store that allows you to taste different flavors? They use tiny spoons to give you a sample so that you can decide whether you like a flavor or not. You might see your grandma taste a sample of food she is cooking to be sure it tastes just right. A sample is not a specific amount. A sample means that you take a part of something instead of taking the whole thing. In class, you may have measured a sample of sugar, not a whole bag of sugar. Sampling is an important way that scientists and you can test materials. How do I measure a sample of air? It is easy to tell that materials like milk and sugar have mass. You could even guess that anything you can see and feel will have mass. Think about things you cannot see or feel, like smells or air. Even though you cannot see or feel air, you observed that it has mass. You measured the mass of a ball when it was deflated. It had very little air in it. Then you measured the mass of the ball when it was full of air. Air must have mass because air was the only thing you were adding to the ball, and the mass increased as you added air. Looking at a graph. Some students in one class measured the mass of the ball before pumping air into it, like you did in class. They also measured the mass of the ball after pumping air into it, 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50 times. Once they collected data, they put the measurements into a graph like this one. Take a minute and look at what this graph is measuring. Here on this axis, we have mass of ball and air. And it goes from 370 grams up by tens to 430 grams. Here on the x-axis, we have the number of pumps of air put into the ball. And this axis goes from 10 to 50 pumps, also counting by tens. You'll see that the first point on the graph shows that at 10 pumps, the ball weighed 390 grams, and at 20 pumps, the ball and air weighed 400 grams. Look at the rest of the points on the graph. How many pumps were at this point, and how much did the ball weigh? Think to yourself for a minute. Now we will go on with the rest of the reading. This type of graph is called a line graph. The points on this graph are measurements that someone has recorded. Sometimes drawing a line through the points helps you see the relationship between two things. Assignment number 1. Look at the graph again. Then fill in the blanks in this sentence. As the blank increases, the blank increases. Assignment number 2. Summarize. Write 5 complete sentences. You may write more. What exactly did this reading talk about? You must be specific. Do not just write, "The reading talks about mass." Tell me what the reading said about mass. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you in class.